The trash doesn't empty itself. That's literally your one job.
I know exactly what my job is here.
Yeah?
Well, do it somewhere I can't smell it.
The Veltrix Gala was the kind of event that cost more than most of the staff earned in a month. Crystal chandeliers, a downtown ballroom, 400 employees in rented tuxedos, champagne nobody had paid for themselves. The new CEO had spared no expense, because Brandon Cole believed a room could be made to respect you if it was just expensive enough. The man with the cleaning cart moved along the edge of all of it. Gray uniform, scuffed shoes, a name tag that read only Walt. Nobody looked at him twice. That was exactly how he wanted it. Because the man emptying the trash was Walter Hale. 11 years ago, in a rented garage 2 miles from this hotel, he had built the company whose logo now glowed 40 feet tall behind the stage. He had stepped out of the spotlight years back, become a name people knew and a face almost no one recognized. For the last 3 weeks, he had clocked in at 6 every morning as a janitor. Not to catch anyone doing wrong, just to feel what his company had become under the man he'd handed it to. And he was finding out. Near the bar, an executive named Greg Talley watched Walt wipe down a table. He lifted his glass of red wine and tilted it, slow and deliberate, until it spilled across the surface Walt had just cleaned. "Oops," Greg said, smiling. "Better get that, champ." A few people chuckled. Walt didn't flinch. He pulled a fresh cloth from his cart and started over, slow and steady, like a man who had cleaned up far worse than spilled wine in his life. A young woman at the end of the table stood up. Her name was Maya Torres, 26, 2 years on the engineering team. She walked over, crouched down, and began blotting the wine with her own napkin. "You don't have to do that," Walt told her. "I know," she said. "I want to." She handed him a clean stack of napkins, gave Greg and Brandon a look that didn't need any words, and went back to her seat. Walt watched her go. He would remember that. Later, before the speeches began, while the band was still tuning, Walt rolled his cart down a quiet service corridor behind the ballroom. That was where he heard it. Brandon's voice, low, on the phone near the loading doors, certain that no one was close enough to listen. "The board signs Monday," Brandon was saying. "After tonight's announcement, it's done. Halcyon absorbs us, and the layoffs start in Q1. There was a pause. "Relax. They don't know yet. By the time these people figure out their jobs are gone, the ink's already dry." Walt stood very still behind the cart. 11 years. A garage. 40 people who had believed in him before there was anything to believe in. And the man he had trusted with all of it was about to sell every one of them out and stand on that stage tonight and call it a victory. He looked down at the trash bag in his hand. Then he looked toward the ballroom, where 400 people were laughing and drinking, not one of them knowing the floor was about to drop out from under their feet. Walt reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. Not the cheap one clipped to his uniform, a different one. He made a single call. "It's me," he said. "Bring the file, all of it, and have legal on standby." A pause. "No, tonight." The lights dimmed, and a host in a sharp navy suit took the stage and welcomed everyone to what he called the biggest night in Veltrix history. The room settled into its seats, glasses catching the light, 400 faces turned toward the front. Brandon Cole moved through the crowd like a man who already knew how the evening would end. He shook hands, clapped shoulders, let people tell him how visionary he was, and accepted every word of it as though it were simply owed to him. Walt had pushed his cart to the back wall, near the service doors, and stood the way staff are supposed to stand, present, but invisible. A floor manager spotted him there and crossed the room fast, embarrassed. "What are you doing in here during the program?" he hissed. "Out. This is for employees only." Walt didn't argue. He stepped back toward the doors. From a nearby table, a voice murmured, "Guess they let anyone in tonight," and a small laugh rippled out and faded. Walt let it pass. He had heard worse in 11 years, and tonight the laughter didn't sting at all. It only confirmed what he had come here to learn. Maya watched the janitor get waved toward the exit, and something tightened in her chest. 3 weeks earlier, she had sent Brandon a flag about the Halcyon consulting talks. Strange activity in the data room, non-disclosure forms that made no sense for a simple partnership. Brandon had called her into his office, smiled, and told her engineers should stick to engineering. She had let it go, told herself she was imagining things. Watching him work the room tonight, she was no longer sure she had been. Near the coat check, 2 people Walt had called slipped in without a sound. A woman carrying a leather portfolio, and a man speaking low into his phone. Nobody noticed them. They found Walt by the service doors, and he took the portfolio, opened it an inch, looked, and closed it again. "Is it all here?" he asked. "Every page," the woman said. Signed term sheet, the headcount memo, the offshore filing. He thought he deleted it. Walt almost smiled. He thought a lot of things. The host returned to the microphone. "And now the man who has taken Veltrix to new heights, your CEO, Brandon Cole." The applause came up warm and certain. Brandon climbed the steps 2 at a time, grinning, soaking it in, and gripped the podium like he owned every inch of it. 11 years ago, this company started in a garage, he said. Tonight, I'm proud to announce the deal that takes us into the future. As of Monday, Veltrix is joining forces with Halcyon Group in a historic partnership. Behind him, the screen lit up, 2 logos sliding together into one, and the room broke into applause. They didn't know. To them, it sounded like growth, like winning, like bigger bonuses and bigger stock, and a future worth raising a glass to. "This is the biggest moment in our history," Brandon went on, riding the wave of it. "And I want every single one of you to know I did this for you." The applause swelled. Glasses lifted into the light. 400 people cheered for the deal that was going to erase most of their own jobs by spring. Maya did not clap. She sat very still, doing the exact math Brandon had once told her to stop doing. Halcyon did not partner with companies. Halcyon absorbed them. Halcyon gutted them and sold off the parts. She looked around at her colleagues, laughing and toasting and trusting, and felt something cold settle in her stomach. At the back of the room, the old janitor set down his cart. He took off the gray work jacket and folded it once, neatly, over the handle. Underneath was just a plain white shirt, nothing impressive. He didn't need anything impressive. Then he began walking toward the stage. A few people noticed first. The janitor, walking up the center aisle. During the CEO's biggest moment, heads began to turn. A confused murmur spread through the room, the kind that moves faster than anyone can stop it, table to table, until even the people who couldn't see were leaning to look. Brandon spotted him and frowned into the microphone. Sir, this is a private event. Someone get him out of here." But the host beside him had gone pale, phone in hand. He had just read a message. He leaned in and covered the mic and whispered something fast and urgent, and for the first time all night, Brandon's smile faltered. Walt reached the foot of the stage. The room had gone almost completely silent now. 400 people watching an old janitor stand below their triumphant CEO, and not one of them understanding why the air had just changed. Walt looked up at him, calm, unhurried, the way a man looks at something he built with his own 2 hands. "Mind if I say a few words?" he said quietly. The room was so still that every person heard it. After all, I'm the one who started this in a garage. For a long moment, nobody moved. Walt climbed the steps slowly, the way a man climbs stairs he has climbed 10,000 times, and crossed to the podium. Brandon stepped back without meaning to. Up close, something about the old janitor had changed, though his clothes were the same. It was the way he stood, like the room belonged to him. "My name is Walter Hale," he said into the microphone. "Most of you have seen my signature on your offer letters. Almost none of you have seen my face." He let that settle. 11 years ago, I started this company in a garage on Fenwick Street with $40,000 and a list of 40 people who believed me when I had nothing to show them. Some of those people are in this room tonight. The murmur that went through the crowd was unlike anything before it. Phones came up. Someone near the front whispered the name to the person beside them, and it spread backward through the ballroom like a wave. Brandon's mouth opened and closed. The host had already stepped off the stage. 3 weeks ago, Walt continued, I started cleaning the floors of my own building, not to catch anyone, just to find out what it feels like to be the person nobody thinks is worth being kind to. He turned, slowly, and looked directly at Brandon. Tonight, I found out. Brandon tried to find his footing. Walter, this is incredible, sir. I had no idea you were, if I'd known. That's the whole point, Walt said. His voice never rose. You didn't know. So I got to see who you really are. He reached down to the side of the podium where the woman with the leather portfolio had quietly set a folder, and he opened it under the light. I heard your phone call by the loading doors, Brandon, about Halcyon, about Monday, about the layoffs you planned to start in Q1, after you stood up here and told 400 people you did it for them. The room went very still in a different way now, the kind of still that comes right before something breaks. This is the signed term sheet, Walt said, holding up a page so the cameras at the side of the stage caught it on the big screen. This is the headcount memo. 612 positions, marked redundant. And this, he turned the page, is the offshore filing you made to keep your bonus out of the deal that would have cost most of the people in this room their livelihood. You thought you deleted it. Nothing ever really deletes. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman put her hand over her mouth. Maya sat frozen. Her own warning from 3 weeks ago suddenly vindicated in front of everyone she worked with. Brandon's face was doing the math now. Everyone could see it. The slow, terrible arithmetic of a man realizing the board did not stand behind him, the room did not stand behind him, that the floor he had been so sure of had never been his at all. You were right about one thing, Walt said. Tonight is historic. As of right now, the Halcyon deal is dead. Legal filed the withdrawal 20 minutes ago. He looked out at the 400 faces. Nobody in this company is losing their job to a deal made in secret. Not one of you. The sound that came up from the room was not applause at first. It was relief. A collective exhale from hundreds of people who had been cheering minutes earlier for their own ending without knowing it. Then the applause came, and it did not stop. Walt waited for it to settle. Then he turned back to Brandon one last time. You spilled wine on a man you thought was nobody, and laughed. You had me thrown out of a room I paid for. You told 400 families you were giving them a future while you signed away their jobs. His voice stayed level, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. I didn't decide this in the last 5 minutes, Brandon. You decided it. On the phone, at the table, every single time you thought no one important was watching. He nodded toward the back of the room, where 2 people in suits had quietly appeared. Your separation paperwork is with HR. Effective tonight. They'll walk you out. Brandon opened his mouth. Whatever he had planned to say, it didn't come. He walked off the stage alone, and the crowd parted for him the way crowds part for someone they no longer recognize. And then he was gone, and the room felt lighter for it. Walt found Maya in the crowd. He didn't point. He just looked at her until she realized he meant her, and the people around her turned to look too. 3 weeks ago, he said, one engineer on the 7th floor sent a memo flagging the Halcyon irregularities. She was told to stick to engineering. She was right, and she was the only one. He smiled, the first real smile of the night. Maya Torres, come up here. She rose slowly, and the applause found her before she even reached the steps. I'm building a new leadership team, Walt said. One that remembers what this company was supposed to be. I'd like you to help me build it, starting Monday. Maya didn't have words. She didn't need them. The room said it for her. Later, when the ballroom had mostly emptied, Walt stood near the service doors where his cart still sat, the gray jacket folded over the handle. He picked the jacket up, looked at it for a moment, and folded it once more carefully, the way you keep something that mattered. Because here is the thing he had gone 3 weeks to learn, and learned in a single night. Who a person is when they think no one important is watching is who they actually are. There is no other version. The titles come off, the expensive rooms empty out, and what's left is only how you treated the people you were sure could never do anything for you. The man who built it all already knew that. Tonight, 400 people learned it too. If this story moved you, do one small thing for the people who never let it show how hard they're trying. Be kind to the one everyone else overlooks. And tell me in the comments, have you ever watched someone treat a nobody with cruelty, not knowing who that person really was? What happened? If stories about quiet people and loud justice are your kind of thing, hit that. Like and subscribe and follow so the next one finds you. There's a new story every week.